Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today we're going to talk about the hero's journey again, part of our Back to Basics series of videos that we're doing for 2020. There's a small part of the hero's journey second edition, which I reviewed last week. If you want to go take a look at that review, I'll put the link down below, or you can just go back in the catalog and take a look at that as well too. But there's on page 28 of the hero's journey second edition. I know it's not out yet. Just trust me on this. Page 28. There's a small variant rule. I don't even want to call it a variant rule. It's just a variant option for your game that I think is probably one of my favorite aspects of this game. Now, it's not original to this game by any sense of the word. It is really something that's been around for a long time. The idea of it, but it's something that I really find fascinating, and I'll tell you why today. And that is the idea of having a lineage. So he doesn't use races in this edition; he calls them lineages, and the lineage variant of errant for humans. That being somebody who travels from another world to this particular fantasy setting. In the literary world, in the book world, it's known as visitation fiction, and it can be found in things such as Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter of Mars, Stephen Donaldson's Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. Terry Brooks had a series of books called the Magic Kingdom for sale. Gene Wolfe's The Knight and the Wizard, and probably most recognizable in the Dungeons and Dragons cartoons from the 80s, where the kids travel from Earth to the world of Dungeons and Dragons. I find this is extremely fascinating. I love this aspect of an idea for a campaign setting, that you're taking people from the regular world and bringing them into a fantasy setting. What James Spahn does in the Hero's Journey second edition is that he says that, if you're playing a character that travels from, say, Earth to this fantasy world, that you have a special skill, a special ability, in that you can draw upon your knowledge of your world, of Earth, of things that you've read, fiction, movies, TV that you've watched or read or consumed, as a way of trying to figure out things in this fantasy world. So if you've read a lot of fantasy novels back on Earth, you might know that in this giant cave in the Dwarven Mountain, there's probably going to be a giant. Like, you have knowledge of things that may or may not be, that might make you seem like an oracle or a seer, or a traveler from a distant land who has knowledge beyond what they should. And I think this is a really fun aspect of role-playing games, and I love to do these types of campaigns or even one-shots of where you're playing a character from Earth, be it a kid or an adult, or however you want it to be, and traveling into a fantasy world and trying to survive there. And it creates some very fun, very interesting stories that can be told with this idea of these visitors from another place and time. Thomas Covenant in Stephen Donaldson's works is a man from Earth who has leprosy, and his wife has abandoned him, these kinds of things. And so when he arrives, he is lauded as being the reincarnation of an ancient hero, and he doesn't want to be there. He's kind of an anti-hero in the story. John Carter of Mars is a man during the Civil War who falls asleep looking up at the stars, wakes up on Mars, and has superhuman abilities based upon the fact that the gravity on Mars is much lower than ours. So there's these different aspects of things that can be brought up and be used in things like the hero's journey. The idea of the kids in the D&D cartoons getting on a roller coaster and ending up in this fantasy world, being stuck there and trying to find their way back home. Can be a very fascinating thing. In fact, a couple of years ago for my birthday, I ran a Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure where that same kind of thing. The kids were high school students, the players were high school students who entered into a haunted house, as it were, the Tower of Zog, and had to find their way back home. And so I find this sort of visitation fiction idea very, very fascinating. And again, it's just a personal thing of mine that I really enjoy. I'm sure there's a few of you out there who find this kind of a cool, fascinating idea. But the hero's journey actually doesn't focus on this, but it's a very small, it's just a part of a page on page 28 that actually allows you to do those kinds of things as well too. And I'm very thankful that James Spahn was, you know, open-minded enough to include something like that, and has that same passion, I guess, or that idea of things as well too. So still on Kickstarter right now, Hero's Journey 2nd Edition. That's by Gallant Knight Games and Barrel Rider Games. Go check it out if you enjoy that kind of thing as well too. Until next time, I'm Questwise, and I am out.